Hello, everyone. This video, we're going to talk about how to buy a house that's on auction with a mortgage. Is this even possible, Mike?
Yeah. So like Paul said, if you're thinking about buying a house at auction but you don't have the cash up front, don't worry. It's possible to use a mortgage in some cases. In this video, we're going to explain how you could buy a house at auction with a mortgage, what to expect, and some key tips for making it happen. Me and Paul, we've been buying auction properties for decades, and we're going to, take you behind the scenes and peel back the curtains to show you how we do it with a mortgage. Paul, let's start off talking with essentially is it possible to use a mortgage for auction properties?
Yep. Now, it's definitely possible to use a mortgage to buy a house at auction for sure. But it does depend on the auction, right? And how much time you have and the auction's payment requirements, because not all are the same. Some auctions, like foreclosure sales, require full payment up front with cash, right? So you're not really going to be able to do that. However, in the private or real estate auctions, you can do this. This is definitely an option for you. The key is to know the auction's rules and prepare for them ahead of time. So, what are some of the types of auctions that allow for mortgages, Michael?
Yeah. So, right. And the first one you just said is private real estate auctions are key. So these could be estate sales, right? Someone's grandparents passed away. Instead of putting it on the MLS, they'll use an estate sale kind of auction service to kind of just move the asset quickly. And a lot of times you could use like a conventional mortgage on that type of stuff. The other type we see a lot are different online auctions out there, or primarily around bank-owned auctions. And they'll allow asset-based lenders, which me and Paul have utilized a lot in the past. These aren't your traditional kind of Wells Fargo's, Bank of America type of institutions. They're more, backed with by private equity money, and they kind of analyze the real estate deal. They offer something primarily called bridge loans, which are like 12 to 24-month loans to buy, renovate, resell, or keep as a rental and kind of refinance out. So that's like a special niche product for investors. That is essentially a mortgage. It's not a cash sale up front. And then the other one I also see through these online auctions, REO, or kind of like the private ones, is sometimes it's eligible for FHA 203K loans. So if you're a first-time home buyer and the property needs some love, some renovations, that's a specific rehab loan program out there that the FHA offers. The downside is if you're going up for like a share of sale or some kind of tax sale, most of the time those are going to be some kind of cash purchase, and a loan most likely won't be an option to purchase at those auctions. So, Paul, let's talk about some steps to buy a house at auction with a mortgage. Step one, I'm guessing it's getting pre-approved. So you're gonna kind of cover some of those.
Yeah,
Few steps.
that's key, right? You got to get pre-approved. And this you can use whether it's Kiavi, an asset-based lender, or even in some instances, you can use traditional mortgage financing if they're going to be quick enough, right? But it's got to be a conventional. As Mike said, the FHA is going to be a little bit longer, so those processes may not work even for an online auction. But you want to make sure you get pre-approved, get a good lender, and you have that pre-approval letter, because that's one of the first things they're going to ask you, should you win that bid, and also for the earnest money deposit. Then you got to understand the auction terms too. Check if the auction allows financing, right? Because some of them, like we said, do not offer financing. If you think about an occupied property, you're not going to get traditional financing on an occupied property. This is where you have to go asset-based lender, and they know they're not going to be able to get inside the property, but they are going to allow you to use them there as long as they take some exterior pictures and have an idea what they're in for. And then bid within your budget. Make sure this is within your budget for sure. You're pre-approved for a certain amount. Say it's 200,000. Make sure you're staying under that amount. You don't want to be able to. You don't want to get the property, be pre-approved, and then be denied afterwards. Once you win at auction, and the purchase agreement is going to come to you, and that's where you're going to really complete the mortgage application, get everything done, and all the underwriting process is going, and then you're going to do your due diligence, extra level due diligence on the property, and then hopefully go to closing there. So, Mike, what are some of the tips for success here?
Yeah. So buying a house at auction with a mortgage is going to take some extra planning up front, some due diligence. So here's some successful tips for you. First, you want to research the property, make sure the home's eligible for financing. Some auction sites that are online have filters for this, like cash only sale. Make sure you don't click that, right? And then you'll kind of see the inventory of properties available for financing. That way you're not wasting time researching a cash only property. And, have a backup plan maybe. If your financing falls through, you might lose your deposit money. So consider having maybe alternative funding options ready. So if you're going the route of traditional financing, because in a estate sale, maybe find another lender out there that can help close quickly. Also, I recommend working with an agent, especially if you're a not seasoned investor. They'll help you navigate the process, and they'll look at the numbers for you, and they kind of help you, confirm your homework's right. If you think properties are worth this much value, what's the real estate agent saying essentially? And then you got to be ready to act quickly. Mortgage approvals take time, so you got to move fast after winning the auction, making sure that you're continuously giving them the paperwork and initial deposits and everything else in between, and making sure the lines of communication are open between auction house and title company in the mortgage process. Paul, what are some of the risks using a mortgage at auction?
Well, a lot of them have these auctions have tight deadlines, right? If it's a sheriff sale, you might have 10 days, you might have 30 days. Under traditional REO auctions, you generally have 30 days, especially when you click on the financing option there, they'll give you time. And in some cases, they'll even give you slightly more there. Other risks are, the property condition. You don't know what it is if it's an occupied property. If it's a vacant property, but it's a HUD CWCOT, they don't always let you get into that property. So again, you have to assume you're going to have to put a lot more rehab into it than what you're going to do. You got other hidden costs, closing costs. And when you factor in, as Mike was talking about the mortgage before, what your pre-approvals for, does the mortgage company charge points? What is their underwriting fee? What are their closing docs fees, title company fees, right? All these different hidden costs that come in there. And a lot of times there'll be an auction fee, right? A reserve or a 5% fee that Mike and I see in a lot of these auctions that we're bidding on. So if you're bidding 200,000, it's actually going to be 210,000 because they put 10,000 on top of it with their 5% fee. So these are some of the hidden costs there that you're going to get. But what are some of the rewards, Michael, of using a mortgage for an online auction?
Yeah, despite all the challenges and obstacles that you talked about, it's got its advantages still. And you got to maybe just have a plan B. As do you have the cash to cover the deposit up front, or maybe worst case scenario on the back end? Can you you'll lend with? Do you know someone else that could help lend and finance this in case it falls through? That will then open up opportunities to buy homes that you would have not ever afforded, and it could be a great source of deal flow if you're prepared and you're an investor. So those are some of the rewards. So if hopefully you got a lot of value out of this video, but with the right preparation, buying a house at auction with a mortgage is definitely achievable. Or if you're ready to take the plunge and learn more, check out the show notes below. We got additional videos that I'll put down there to kind of walk you through more detailed processes of what actually goes on at an auction and more.